This is K-12 Tech Talk. K-12 Tech Talk. The podcast by K-12 Techs for K-12 Techs. Real conversations, real arguments, and real banter on trending K-12 technology topics and issues.
Live from the somethingcool.com studios, this is the K-12 Tech Talk podcast. This is episode 140. My name is Josh, with you weekly, every week. Mark is here with me every week.
Yep.
Hello, Mark.
Hi.
You'll notice who is missing. We have deemed him as part-time at this point. Chris has gone part-time. He is too busy for us, too famous running candy stores and whatnot. So this week, before we get into the meat of the episode with our new trial co-host that we have, Eric, he is going to try out tonight. Welcome, Eric, to the show.
Thank you for having me. And I hope I do it justice and can fill his shoes.
It won't be hard. Trust me. It's as long as you don't tell any inappropriate jokes or anything like that, we're good.
All right on.
So yeah, Chris is out. Eric's here for an interview about some interesting events that took place at his school district. But before we get started with that, let's do some housekeeping. We do need to talk about our sponsors, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here, because Mark is expensive. Those sponsors this week are Extreme Networks. Dominic Mayer, I am drinking some nice ice water this evening out of an Extreme Networks insulated mug. You can see the purple mug here. So email Dominic at dmayer, M-A-Y-E-R, at extremenetworks.com if you are in the market for some switching gear and want to take a look at Extreme. Dominic will set you up right. Another sponsor tonight who's been with us for quite a while, Fortinet. Chris Illingworth and those guys over there at Fortinet, they can help you out with firewalls, EDR, you name it, they can help you. They can do full stack from firewalls all the way down to distribution switches. Email FortinetPodcast at Fortinet.com. Tell Chris we sent you over there. And finally, NTP, SOC, 24/7 SOC management. They can manage your Sentinel-1 installation. If you have Sentinel-1 and you are coming up for renewal, David over at Sentinel or over at NTP has told us to tell you that if your renewal is coming up, he can probably save you money and you'll get a 24/7 SOC with it. So if you have Sentinel-1, give David an email, DREN, W-R-E-N, at ntp-inc.com, and he can set you up with some Sentinel-1 pricing. And finally, tonight, we are welcoming back Vizor, V-I-Z-O-R. They've released a major update over the summer, huge update, massive, with over 60 new features to help manage Chromebooks in schools. One of the big highlights is automating Chromebook power washing, a new auto assign algorithm based on current or recent logins, and a new rules engine which permits tons of Chromebook management app automations like OU assignment and stuff like that. K-12 Tech Talk listeners get a 20% discount from Vizor, vizor.cloud/K12 Tech Talk. Go over and tell those guys hello. So another big announcement we have tonight, we are trying to record this video for the first time, and we are going to try and edit it and upload it to YouTube because Google is killing off Google Podcasts. So we are going to make that migration over to YouTube and YouTube Music's podcasting service. But we figured, why not do some video while we're at it? So if you are on YouTube, I'm going to sound like all those hip YouTubers. Mark, you know what the phrase is, right?
I didn't know we were doing video. I gotta put this can away.
Smash that subscribe button. Smash that subscribe button. That's the hip phrase that all the kids use.
Smash
right?
that? Is that what they say?
Yeah, smash that subscribe button, if I can say it. I haven't been drinking. Only Mark has. And it's after hours before anybody gets upset. It's after hours. Mark's at home. You can see that from the decorations in the video. So now all of that is done. All of that housekeeping is done. we did run through quite a list of sponsors tonight. I have made a complaint to Chris. I was listening to some podcasts over the weekend, and I've noticed that like Buffalo Wild Wings is a sponsor of a bunch of podcasts. Viore exercise clothes. Like Chris needs to step the game up, and I want some leggings and I want some Buffalo Wild Wings gift cards, Mark.
Not responding to that.
Okay. All right. Well, there goes that bit. Mark, why don't you introduce Eric and tell us why he is here now that we're through all of that?
Yes, so Eric is not actually interviewing to be the next host, although if Chris keeps skipping out on us, it might just happen by default.
Might be an open position. I might need to apply for it. Okay.
Yep.
Eric, I've known for a number of years, comes from the Midwest. So he's more on your neck of the woods, Josh, and is in one of the large districts. We've done a few projects together. And we were having dinner a few weeks ago, and Eric was talking to me about his run-in with ransomware. And I said, this is a phenomenal story that I would love to be able to tell. So took a little bit of time to wrestle him down, but we now have Eric tonight talk to us about his district and his run-in and escape from ransomware. So Eric, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your district, where you are, where you're from, and give us the lay of the land.
Thank you again for having me. It's an honor and a privilege to be here and to share our story. Name is Eric Heilman, and I am the Executive Director of IT Services for the Oklahoma City Public Schools in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, where we proudly serve approximately 33,000 students. And I've been here for 10 years, and I still love it every single day.
33,000, you know, Mark's over there saying, I got more than that. He does that to us all the time. And I've only got like 3,000 kids, and he's like, oh, well, I've got...
You don't even know.
Yeah, I got 80,000 teachers.
So Eric and I will go with what Josh refers to as the secret society. And
Yes.
and we'll go and we'll interact with other large districts. And Eric
We're
and I
a rural
are...
school. We're tiny compared to those other large districts. Right?
And we are tiny too. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll be sitting with, LA. We've had LA's both, former and current CIOs on, and they're 500,000 students. So
Clark
there
County,
is,
350,000 kids. It was like, wow, we have nothing about scale on those guys.
Yeah. There's always a bigger fish.
That is
Always
right.
a bigger fish.
But in our ponds, we're pretty big fish in our own ponds. But compared to some of the other ponds out there, we are a tiny rural school.
Well, and we do have something here in the Midwest, Eric, that Mark doesn't have. And I think he's mentioned several times that he doesn't have to worry about earthquakes and tornadoes. Right, Mark? You don't have to worry about tornadoes. And I think that's it's always a chance we're going to have an
Hurricanes make it up that far, though, don't they?
Yeah, they get...
they just rain by the time they get to us.
All right.
Yeah. So we have tornadoes.
The fringe
and
edges.
earthquakes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, Eric, why don't you kind of lay the groundwork of what happened? Like, set the stage. You've already told us you have 30,000 plus kids. Kind of set that stage of what happened. You said this was back in May of 2019, I think.
2019, sure was May of 2019. So I'll start off first by saying that I received. I stayed home that day. I had a horrible migraine that would not go away. And I get a call from some of my tech staff, and I also get a call from our risk manager, and says, "Hey, I think we're under a ransomware attack." And I'm like, "Oh dear Lord, I am not there. I'm going to have complete faith in my team that they're going to run and do this beautifully without me, because I will be there tomorrow." And so I didn't join until the second day. But by the end of the first day, district leadership had already decided to pull the plug on our internet circuit, and that was more than anything, pulling that plug for an entire week of no internet connectivity. You would think that we are back in the Stone Ages. Teachers don't know how to teach. We could not function as a district at all.
You were at home, and without you, they made the decision to pull the
Absolutely.
plug?
I'm telling you.
But you know what, though? That speaks to... I'm going to make an assumption here. That speaks to the forethought and planning and kind of tabletop exercise-ish conversations that you've had with your department, or maybe your department had without you, for them to be comfortable enough to make that decision without you there. I think that's already a check mark in your favor.
It was my superintendent that made that decision, and they encouraged him, saying, "Hey, allow us to pull the plug. make it sub number one. That's what happened.
Wow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So day one, I mean, you are completely out. You're not in the office.
I am off grid.
You are off you're not looking at emails. You're not looking at phones.
Nope.
You're not looking at calls.
It is a quiet, cold, dark room.
Wow.
Oh, man.
So, all right. So then maybe you could put us in the shoes of the person who found this. What are they seeing, or what are what's telling them that they're under a ransomware attack?
It came from an internal. We shot ourselves in the foot. It was an internal issue, and it was one of our technicians. And I got to still give him just massive praises and extol his virtues almost every day. He was patient zero. And he recognized that right away that his machine had been encrypted.
Wow.
And he came in right away that morning and says, "Hey, I think I screwed up. My machine's encrypted. I think I'm patient zero." And indeed, he was. And you know how easy it would have been for him to not say that, right? And
yeah.
And trying to search a needle in a haystack and find out what patient zero was.
Wow.
And he totally owned up to it. And I cannot praise him enough for coming forward, because that we saved hours of research time. And so let me describe what had happened, and let me kind of set the technical environment around by which this occurred. So we had, at the time, we were in Altira's shop. And to be able to do out-of-band remote control service management outside of the network, we hosted basically a command and control server at our state network. One is our state network. So we had a virtual machine at the state network, and that was our command and control for, at the time, how to control and manage our machines remotely for our technical staff. And that service did not have any sort of single sign-on methodology. It didn't have multi-factor authentication at the time. And it was a separate user account database, separate access control list that, again, it's integrated into that system, but nothing else. Mistake number one: you want your tools to be able to talk to each other, right? Yeah. So that's definitely a lesson learned. And the administrator of that server and that service would put a default password for the technician, which then the technician was to update that default password. You know where I'm going with this,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
That was never updated, right? And so looking at logs, we found that a majority of the traffic was coming from Russia and China. And they had guessed that default password that had yet to be changed for that user. And so that was the entry point. That was the kind of one of the biggest ahas that we discovered, is that those threat actors are going to gravitate to that low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
It was not a sophisticated attack and deployment. It was very laborious. Again, looking over at logs, hindsight's 2020. I'm sure a quarterback. Once we looked at those logs, we could see that they were logging in between local hours, Oklahoma City time, Central Time Zone, between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. And they did that for 30 days.
Oh my gosh!
Right. So, and what they did during that time is they would look at the console and see, a bunch of machine names, and they would literally connect to that machine. It would come up on, like, I'm talking to you guys, you know what I'm talking about. It would come up on their box, and if the machine was locked, Control Delete locked, they would immediately go off. I mean, it was literally a 3-second connection. If they connected to one that was open, find one, deliver a payload. And they did that for 30 days.
Wow.
Right. So when the logic bomb went off, and that was detonated, They all happened at the same time that day that I was happened to be home in May of 2019. Had that happened a week before, it would have hit student testing. Had it happened a week after, it would have hit payroll. This was the best of the no good times for it to have happened.
Right.
but we still had school, and school was going on for that week. And so the decision to pull that plug, I'm kudos to them to be able to do that and know that they were going to storm the Bastille, because you can't do anything these days. I mean, everything is connected. It requires some sort of connectivity, some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the point of entry and the point of attack and how that happened. And at the end of the day, once that detonation occurred, we had approximately 200 machines that had delivered that payload. So going through those machine names, delivering that payload, it happened 200 times. Once that detonation occurred, we had 26 machines that were encrypted.
Wow.
I know. So when you think about it, only 26 machines. I mean, that means we got grazed by that bullet. We got off extremely lucky. Of those machines, none of them in the server side. So nothing in the network server infrastructure. It was all end user machines. Of those were machines that had local admin rights. The others that when tried they wouldn't detonate because they didn't have local admin rights and couldn't encrypt anything.
Wow.
On scale. Yeah.
Holy cow.
We take this. We do not negotiate with terrorists seriously, but we only have 26 machines, so it was a pretty easy decision not to negotiate with terrorists with 26 machines. We just called it good. Yeah.
So the encryption, was it a standard like Microsoft encryption, or did they use their own, ransomware package? Like what did the user see on the screen?
I don't recall. I've slept since then. I think I've blocked that out of my mind on purpose, right?
Sure.
It's my own denial and protection mechanism against this.
So
it was the standard ransomware message where click on the text file and you see, okay, you've been encrypted, you send us a bunch of Bitcoin, blah 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 blah.
Wow. Yeah.
But it was the Grand Crab was the variant, Grand Crab 5.2 at the time. Grand
Crab. So you get a text file ransomware note. Can I ask if there was any other communication with the threat actors?
Yes. That's the next piece, and it's one of my I would say lessons learned, but I think we had this ahead of time. So if you haven't done this, take this as a lesson and learn from those that have made these mistakes. But I would highly recommend that you have a relationship with your district risk manager. Vital.
Yeah.
Because your district risk manager is going to be core to insurance and cyber insurance and those cyber carriers. And the cyber carriers will then engage with your risk manager and legal counsel and district leadership and IT, of course, about how to eradicate that, how to communicate, so they did all that for us. We didn't have to do that. So they were the intermediary that did that. And they brought specialists from offsite. They used Kivu, Kivu. I think this particular team was out of DC. And they came in, and this was another pain point. And again, without a network, you had to touch every single machine to do this. But to ensure that it wasn't the double exploit that you have now that you mostly see when you have a ransomware event. Usually it's a ransomware and exfiltrate. Right. And that's where they wanted to confirm was that there was no exfiltration. And having to go around every single machine and touch all these lab computers, this is pre-COVID, right? So not everyone's one-to-one. You had a lot of labs out there. But going around and touching every machine and getting these zip packages that SFTP to to their key views infrastructure for them to explore and dissect, and the forensics involved, cyber forensics involved, to confirm that nothing was extracted. It would have been probably a completely different conversation had they exfiltrated
Sure.
the data,
Yeah.
and they did. And that's what took a really long time that week, was to make sure all that happened.
So one of the horror stories that I've heard from districts around us that have had this happen, when they make that call to their cyber insurance company and they engage them, and that outside entity comes in and starts helping manage the problem, the comments that I've heard, some of the recurring comments that I've heard from different people is, you're more or less letting go of all control. That outside entity is now calling the shots from top to bottom, who you can talk to, what you can say to who. But the flip side of that is they're not doing any of the work. The work is still on you, is still on your IT department, local boots on the ground, but yet they're in control of your network at that point. Is that something that you saw as well, or?
It is. I wouldn't call that necessarily a complaint. If anything, it was a welcome respite of making those decisions, because they
Sure.
have the expertise, right? I mean,
Sure.
that's what they do for a living, day in and day out. And so they had that playbook as to what we should do. So I welcomed that.
Okay.
Wow.
Did you guys get any governmental involvement? Was the FBI contacted? Was CISA contacted? Stuff like that?
CISA, we weren't members of CISA at the time, but the FBI, we did contact FBI and local authorities. And we also had, on the second day, when I came back, we had a group from the Office of Management of Enterprise Services, and that is a state agency that they cover IT services for all the state agencies that are in our state. Schools are considered political subdivisions, so that's how we can get some support from them, even though they don't have oversight over K-12 schools.
Yeah.
Since they, as political subdivisions, we can get some support from them, and we gladly accepted that too, because they have that expertise.
Very cool.
So as far as you said, you were down a week. Did they canceled school for the week, or did you have kids on site?
They did not. They went old school analog. I mean, some of these new teachers who have never done this before, they're 22 years old, fresh out of college, like, I don't know how to do this. I need my internet, right? So it was challenging in some cases. And in other cases, they were like, okay, digital distractions are away. We're going to go old school analog, and that's okay too. Yeah, it's character building. That's what that is.
So at what point was there a decision to turn the internet back on, right? To reconnect everything? What was that like, or what kind of pre-work did you have to do before you were comfortable doing that?
We really, Kivu again was that third party oversight and cybersecurity specialists that came in as per the insurance broker, and we kind of relied on them. If they were satisfied, we were going to be satisfied.
Okay.
If we did it by ourselves, it may have been a little bit longer, because we don't have that expertise, and so relying on them to make sure they're comfortable. If they're comfortable, we're comfortable. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, the other thing that's going through my head is you've shut the internet off for a week. So obviously this is not happening in a vacuum. What was communication like internally, right, within your central office? What was it like with schools, and what was the response from teachers? And then more importantly, how did parents respond?
Those are good questions. And so I will tell you this first. My district leadership was outstanding. They were here every single day, was intimately involved with the decision making, interfacing with the threat actors and with the cybersecurity firm, with the insurance brokers. My superintendent was actively involved, and he would bring breakfast up for the team, and awesome. He did. He'd bring McDonald's breakfast up for the team, And so it wasn't just an IT problem or an IT issue. And what was also, I'm going to use the word wonderful here, so go with me on it, was other entities who were helping going around to all these machines and doing it. So we had folks from career tech education, we had security department, we had counselors, we had librarians who all came together with this shared crisis and just made magic happen. They moved mountains.
You're making this sound like a wonderful experience, Eric.
Well, at 26 machines was a wonderful experience. Let me just tell you, okay?
Very
26
true.
machines was a wonderful thing.
And that, that's crazy lucky that 26 machines is really all that was affected. So, okay, let's
Josh, let me interject this real quick.
Yeah.
So I came here in 2012, in the summer of 2012, and I was there. We had principals meetings, and I was interfacing with them and say, what can I do to help you be better leaders? And they were like, give us admin rights. Wait, you know where this is going, okay?
Oh,
you know where this is going. So they said, give us admin rights so we can help install printers and we can blah, 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 blah. I was like, that sounds pretty reasonable. Why not? Okay. And then my network team, they just pushed back and said, of course, every time your network teams, they always say the sky is going to fall and you're going to break the internet, right?
Sure.
And 7 years later, guess what? Dang it, they were right, and they got to say, "Told you."
Oh my god!
So of those 26 machines, a good portion of those were principal machines because they had admin rights. I know. You can't make this up. And again, central office. We had central office has admin rights too, and it's at this point even now. If I wanted to close those barn doors, man, that would be hard to close because they've had it for so long, and that's hard to overcome. But yeah, my network team got to say, "Told you," and it's like, yeah.
So even after this, okay, so I do want to go back to parents in a second, but even after this, you're still struggling with, people wanting to change and get rid of admin, all those kinds of things. You're still struggling with this, even though we're still struggling
with that. Yeah. But I will tell you when we go back to another point I'll make in a second about antivirus and endpoint protection. I'll go back to that, and this gives me a little bit of comfort. So even today, our central office still has admin rights, and principals have admin rights too. But yeah, 26 machines, a big portion of those were principals, and my network team got to say, "Told you." And 7 years later, they got to say, "Told you." It's like, wow, I got to eat some crow on that one.
I will say, after the ransomware interviews that we've done, both the anonymous ones and the ones that are public, there's always I told you so. It's
right.
There's always the this was our weakness. We knew it. We just didn't do anything about it. Or yeah. Wow.
And I think the other funny characteristic among them is there's always a conversation about the superintendent bringing food.
Yeah.
Like Tom.
Really? That's a common thing. Okay.
Yes.
So
Tom Ryan was talking about bringing pizza, I think.
Right.
That's a common statement. Yeah.
Interesting. So it must be in the superintendent playbook.
Yeah.
Bring food during crisis.
It's just one page. Bring IT food.
Yeah. It doesn't matter
they're
what.
Happy, right?
Yeah, right.
Feed them.
Let me ask you. Let me ask a recovery question real quick, Mark, and then you can talk about your parent question. 26 machines affected, 200 machines accessed. How many? And maybe you said this. How many did you have to reimage? Was it just the 26, or did you burn
just the 26?
Wow,
just those 26.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, I would have burned everything
26.
down.
Like I said, we got off really, really lucky at the end of the day. It seemed worse than it is not having network connectivity. But 26 machines, we got off super lucky, just a bullet graze.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 26 infected, 200 accessed. Ballpark, you don't have to give an exact number. What's your device count for PCs now? I mean, in total.
Yeah, so back then, 2019, it was roughly 10,000 machines that we had. and a majority of those, at least in schools, were lab machines of some sort.
Sure, right.
With COVID and the pandemic, we're now 1-to-1. Most of those labs are gone. CTE labs still exist.
Yeah.
At the high school level, and we're no longer Windows based laptops. That were all Chrome OS or iOS for iPads for the littles. But so right now you say how many devices we have, 33,000 plus, right? But back then we had 10,000.
Yeah, in 2019 was really what I was getting at. There's
10,000.
10,000 devices that could have potentially been affected. What was your staff like at the time? Your IT staff, sorry.
IT staff, they spent a lot of hours up here.
Well, no, I mean count-wise, like how many technicians?
Got you. Count 40-ish.
Okay.
40.
Interesting.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, right, and we're still about 40-ish.
I was going to say the number of devices compromised is less than your IT staff is amazing.
That's phenomenal. I know.
We've talked to districts who have had to bring in the National Guard to re-image computers.
Yeah.
So
we talked to a huge, what was it, parish down Louisiana.
Yeah.
Right.
They had to call the National Guard in to help. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, I want to continue on Mark's question on communication and media. So the media got a hold of it right away. But we have a good relationship with our local media services and news outlets. And so communicate constantly, communicate consistently, communicate often. Yeah, and be as transparent as you possibly can. We of course within reason, and give time updates and ETAs to completion and back to normal. The more you can communicate with your media outlets, and the more transparent you can be, the more supportive your community is. And I think our community was fairly supportive. In fact, I'm still trying to think. I don't think we had much negative pushback from the community at all. Great. I think they were very supportive.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Wow, you really do have the best case scenario ransomware.
I know. That's
the Midwest, man. The Midwesterners are nice.
So in the start, when you start to tell the stories, you're leading this story about like all the things you hear about on the news of, default settings, secure by design.
Yep.
So you had both worst case as well as best case in that it didn't have as much of an impact. When all is said and done, I'm assuming you have a debrief and you kind of think about what are the things that we need to change, or what would you do differently if this exact same thing happened. So tell us about kind of a debrief of what happened.
So in the immortal words of Winston Churchill, don't let a crisis go to waste. Good crisis go to waste, right? We took that to heart. And this was an IT told you. So current administration notwithstanding, we had asked for next gen AV endpoint tools, log aggregators, the defense in depth, the layered approach to cybersecurity, and those tools are ungodly expensive. They are, and they're not ratable. Come on, E-rate, we're hoping for it, right? They're not E-ratable, and they're expensive to acquire. It's not a set and forget. You have to manage it, so that's an additional resource. But we've been asking for these tools for a long time, and there was just never any budget for them. Kind of like the LA model, when they had their most recent ransomware attack, their event, they got pretty much a blank check to get whatever tools is necessary to within reason. So after this event, guess what? We got next gen endpoint, right? We're a Splunk shop now, and as a managed service, we have a secure mail gateway with Proofpoint, and so yes, it happened, and these things could help prevent that from happening. Although having shooting yourself in the foot in an internal problem that happened in your own shop and you were patient zero. I mean, I got a black eye on it still, right? In fact, it might be swell. You can see it's going down. I put my stake on there and it's coming down. But changing our network security methodology to zero trust. We're moving toward that. We're about to embark on MFA, and if you guys are already there, go ahead and laugh at me. We're not there yet, but it's coming. It's coming soon. Let me tell you. So we were an Altera shop, as I'd mentioned, and as part of Alteris, we were semantic endpoint protections what we had, and I know what you're thinking because I thought the same thing. Were your definitions up to date? Well, yes, they were up to date.
Yeah,
they were indeed up to date, but they didn't see that signature in those files until after it detonated. Then it started catching some things, right? But our definitions were up to date, and in fact, that particular variant had already been on the street for 30 days. And it didn't catch it. So that was another one of those. If we had these next gen AV tools, maybe we would cause some of that. And so guess what? We got some next gen AV tools because we didn't let a good crisis go to waste.
Sure.
Wow.
Did that answer your question, Mark?
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing.
And when you bring up MFA like that, and you say, you guys have already done it, laugh at us, but I found with these discussions that we've done, and then talking to the amount of people that I talk to on a pretty regular basis, all of those decisions, it's like politics, right? All politics is local.
Right.
All of those decisions really depend on the temperature in your district. If you don't have the political capital to spend to push out MFA for email and on your elevated accounts, or like in your example, removing local admin rights away from administrators, that in your environment that's not going to fly, then I think the discussion then shifts to, okay, how do you mitigate? We're going to accept that risk, but then how do we mitigate that risk as much as possible? And if you're rolling MFA now, great. You're rolling MFA now. You know when the time's right. It's a
journey. You're 100% right. Yeah. And that's this is our train stop on this journey. That we're IT's about to do it first, obviously, and then we'll sort of do some other divisions. And, the CTO umbrella, and then we'll send to the central office, and then the big one is a school, and then the district. Right. That's kind of how that works.
Yeah. Have you started communicating that out with staff yet?
Not
teachers?
Yet.
No,
not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want us to share this podcast and so that they know?
It's a great way for them to find out. Yeah.
Mark, I love you, man. That's harsh, dude.
Yeah, let's just say the date now, Eric. Come on.
Come on. All right.
So January 1st, Oklahoma City Public Schools, you're all going MFA. You heard it from Mark.
No, just make it January 2nd, Mark. When they come back, there's probably a PD day in there. Make it that PD day.
After Christmas, After Christmas break, they're going to come back. We have a PD day. Guess what? Right. Surprise!
Right. You're welcome. You're welcome, Eric.
Thanks, man. Oh, you won.
Yeah. See, that's what Mark does. So as far as recovering and recovery, you only had to rebuild 26 machines. Super lucky. Was there much of a IT should have known better, or IT should have caught this at any point from either the community or administrators, or even grumblings from teachers in the hall as they're dealing with no internet for a week and no systems for a week? Did you didn't have any of that conversation or any of that pushback at all?
We didn't. I know that sounds surprising, and I think they coalesced around this shared experience. This shared pain together. In fact, it was just the opposite. My client services team, they're the face of IT. They're the ones who are out in schools doing break fix. They got treats and and baskets of goodies. It's like, man, we need to do this again. This is awesome, right?
That's funny. I was on LinkedIn and I was following some CIO up in Iowa, and they had an incident. And they were a couple days into it, and it was deep, and they were recovering, and no internet, but they hadn't canceled school. And they posted a picture of the door to their office, and kids were making cards and thank you notes and taping them to the door. Yeah, it's like, that's neat. That's
heartwarming.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, so I mean, they had treats and donuts and pizza and
Wow.
candy and whatever. So they really coalesced around them. And
that's cool.
It was excellent.
So you're telling me I should open a Google Doc on my superintendent's computer that says, "Yeah, you got ransomware,"
and she'll start bringing pizza.
And then just unlimited food.
No, but Josh, you asked another question. I forgot. Repeat your last question. There was something else I wanted to add.
It was about that meant that IT should have known better or anything.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. If anything, we are our own worst critics. We should have known better, and it's on us. And especially since it was our fault, and we take that to heart. So there may have been some sentiment out there like, IT, you should have known better. But if there was that sentiment, it was quiet and they didn't show it.
Interesting.
But this is a very friendly state. Had you been in Massachusetts, it may be on a different story, right?
Oh yeah. No, I'm dead.
You're going to hear all about it.
It's just a matter of what beach my body washes up on shore. I mean, we've seen The Departed. We know how those Boston movies end.
That's funny.
It's a done deal for me.
So, has this changed how your department operates? We've already kind of talked about you're rolling MFA soon. You're going to try and address the local admin rights thing, but from an operational standpoint, or even a security standpoint, what was your biggest takeaway from this or learning experience from this incident?
That it can happen to you. And I joke all the time that, especially on the network side of the house, the sky is always falling and they're going to break the internet. If you bring in this IoT device, oh my God, it can bring down the whole network. I'm sure you guys have heard that before.
Sure. I think I've said that.
Right. But by God, if they were right on this one. It's not an if, it was not a win. No, if it was a win, right? And it was our turn. And so now we engage in try to be faithful in tabletop exercises and try to plan for those contingencies.
Interesting.
Well, Eric, we've talked to you for a good 40 minutes. I think we've all learned something.
I could go another hour. This is good stuff. I love it.
What other policies are we rolling out to his teachers while he's on here?
Yeah.
That's not nice, Josh.
A few takeaways that I've taken from this. The first is, the things that MS Isaac and CISA are saying for us to do, the secure by design, the everything you've learned that the hard way.
Yep.
That everything that you just described in terms of how your incident happened really came down to all the lessons, all the headlines that we keep hearing MS Isaac and CISA saying, these are the things you need to do. The other thing, though, is that you have an incredibly high collaborative, high functioning team that operated without you there and made the right decisions, and B, your communication, open lines of communication with the community really helped the community understand that we're all in this together, that you guys were attacked. So, these are, kind of a couple of things that we try to talk about, or, making sure that we're listening to the recommendations that are coming down, but also really open communication, which can be painful at times, really helped you guys in the end, if that makes sense.
And there's another thing, difference between K-12 and private sector. Private sector, there's trade secrets, there's intellectual property there's not that collaborative approach you have with K-12. And when we had our incident, of course, it blasted on the news. My phone text was blown up with surrounding area tech directors that, hey, what do you need? We're here to help. If you need some hands, we'll come in. And we've had surrounding districts who went through ransomware. We do the same thing. We share and share alike and give alike, because we're all in this together.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Well, do you have any closing statements for your interview to be co-host to replace Chris?
Well, I was hoping this was a dress rehearsal, and if he doesn't come back in a few weeks, use this as
we'll have
as,
you back.
as,
Yeah.
use this as my as my artifact.
No, that's great
for interviewing.
That's awesome.
We appreciate you being on. Maybe we'll send you some podcast swag or something once we get
Right
on,
on.
Chris.
Hey, we're good with food. You know how that works. So.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, thanks for coming on. We appreciate the time you spent with us, and we hope your MFA rollout goes well, and those discussions around some of those restrictions are heard and understood, especially since you've been through it. That's something I don't think anybody wants to go through, but I think only having 26 machines affected, you definitely you had about as good a deal as you could going through that type of event.
I count my blessings every day on that one.
All right, cool.
Thank you very much, Eric.
You were most welcome. This was a privilege. Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun.
The views and opinions expressed in the K-12 Tech Talk podcast are the personal opinions of Josh, Chris, and Mark, and do not represent the views or opinions of our sponsors or other organizations that we're affiliated with. The material and information presented here is for general information and entertainment purposes only. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.